There are places in the world where life is as fascinating as it is controversial. You'll find it hard to believe that there is a country where nature hides some of the largest animals on Earth, fluorescent beaches, and extraordinary realities such as the most sensual carnival on the planet. A festival full of color and eccentricities, considered the most provocative in the world, where thousands of beautiful women in tiny costumes perform forbidden dances at a crazy, rule-free party where more than one person ends up passing out. Don't miss this new video from Uncensored World to learn about Trinidad and Tobago, one of the most culturally diverse territories in the Americas, where Africans, Indians, Europeans, Chinese, and Arabs have lived together for centuries, giving rise to surprising realities such as moon baths, in which half-naked women immerse themselves to balance their intimate energy, beliefs in spirits that return to torment those who hurt them, or the invention of the Limbo, a dance that is so common today at many parties, but which here was associated more with death than with life. A nation full of unique natural treasures, such as lakes made of tar that seem alive, volcanoes that spew mud, some of the largest and most colorful reefs in the Caribbean, birds that seem to be from another planet, or giant animals such as snakes, bats, and turtles that can weigh over 900 pounds. Get ready to discover the reasons why this is the country with the most sensual dance and carnival on the planet. Let's get started. Trinidad and Tobago, two small islands lost at the southern end of the Caribbean, just above Venezuela, where the ocean mixes with myths, where African, Indian, and European history collide, creating a country as fascinating as it is unknown. Although they are two relatively small islands, Trinidad is about half the size of Puerto Rico, and Tobago is even smaller, similar to Ibiza. They have an overflowing identity that surprises everyone. Unlike other Caribbean destinations, life here does not revolve around tourism, but rather an explosive mix of culture, sensuality, mysteries, and natural phenomena unique on the planet. Despite occupying a territory of just 5,000 square kilometers, its population is around 1.4 million, giving it a density similar to that of highly populated countries such as the United Kingdom. This human concentration, combined with the extreme diversity of origins, has created a vibrant and culturally hyperactive society. The country is a small territory, but it contains extraordinary biodiversity, an intense history, a multicultural people, and a lifestyle so free, provocative, and authentic that it leaves a lasting impression on those who visit it. In addition, Trinidad and Tobago was one of the first oil-producing countries in the Caribbean and the Americas, a pioneer in oil extraction and refining since the early 20th century, long before other nations in the region developed this industry. This energy wealth shaped its economy, society, and modern identity. Where many small nations tend to have a uniform culture, this country works just the opposite. The smaller the space, the more intense each tradition, each sound, each dance, and each foreign influence that reached its shores becomes. And perhaps because of its small size, all these cultures did not disperse, but rather mixed and reinforced each other, giving rise to a country where nothing is diluted and everything becomes pure identity. To understand how this country came to be what it is, we must travel back in time. The name Trinidad was given by Christopher Columbus on his third voyage in honor of the Holy Trinity. Tobago, on the other hand, derives from the indigenous word tobacco. According to some chroniclers, the island received this name because it was shaped like a roll of tobacco, or because it was used extensively in spiritual rituals. Over the following centuries, these islands were a magnet for European colonizers. The Spanish, French, English, and Dutch constantly fought over them. Each power brought African slaves, indentured laborers from India, Chinese, Syrian, and Lebanese merchants, and entire populations seeking a new life in the Caribbean. The result is not just a cultural mix, but rather one of the strongest, most intense, and most visually striking cultural mixes in all of the Americas. That is why in this country, Languages, dances, gods, colors, and bodies have been merging for centuries to create a nation completely unlike any other. This mix explains why Limbo, steel pan, the world's most provocative dances, African superstitions, Hindu temples on the water, sensual carnivals, and dishes that combine curry with metal drums, African gods with Caribbean music, and Catholic faith with moon baths were born here. To begin this tour of Trinidad and Tobago, we will start with one of the most impressive phenomena on the planet, known as Pitch Lake, the world's largest natural asphalt lake. Many experts agree that Pitch Lake was formed thousands of years ago, when a deep fracture in the Earth's crust caused underground oil to slowly rise to the surface. There, the sun, time, and certain microorganisms transformed that oil into a thick mass of tar that never quite hardens. The most surprising thing is that, according to recent studies, beneath this lake there is a system of natural caves and chambers formed by internal pressures that push the asphalt as if it were a living organism. For some scientists, it is one of the few places on the planet where geology beats. This gigantic black deposit moves, breathes, and slowly changes shape every second. That is why some geologists claim that it is alive, in the geological sense of the word, although the inhabitants of Trinidad tell other much darker stories. Many locals believe that this dark, gelatinous sea holds ancient souls, that there are mysterious caverns beneath it, and that sometimes when you walk on it, you can feel as if something or someone is moving under your feet. And disturbing stories circulate among the inhabitants of the area, tales of people who, according to them, ventured too far into Pitch Lake and never returned. No one knows if they were trapped by the tar, if they fell into a deep crevice, or if these are just exaggerated legends. But the locals claim that the lake takes what it considers to be its own. At Pitch Lake, the surface looks like jelly. The ground sinks slightly, and cracks expel bubbles that smell like another world. Some scientists believe it could be key to understanding the formation of oil, but locals see it as a reminder that Trinidad is an unpredictable, untamable country. And speaking of the unexpected, Trinidad and Tobago also surprises with unique religious buildings, such as the Temple in the Sea, a Hindu temple literally built on water. It was built by a man named Sodas Sadhu, stone by stone, after the British colonial authorities forbade him from building it on dry land. His decision was so firm that he walked with wheelbarrows full of stones to the sea, spread the ground with his own hands, and finally built the temple in the middle of the water as a symbol of faith, resistance, and hope. Today, it is one of the country's most iconic sites and a reminder of the indomitable spirit of those who came from India. Although this iconic temple is Hindu, the majority religion in the country is Christianity, inherited from European colonization, especially British. Approximately half of the population identifies as Christian, with churches everywhere and intense celebrations. However, Trinidad and Tobago has one of the largest and most vibrant Hindu communities in the Americas, due to the arrival of thousands of Indian workers during the 19th century, when they were brought to work on sugarcane plantations after the abolition of slavery. They are responsible for the presence of temples, festivals such as Diwali, and rituals full of light and spirituality that coexist peacefully with Christian and African traditions. This crossroads of religions, Christianity as the majority, Hinduism as a very influential minority, and African beliefs that still live on in stories and rituals, makes Trinidad and Tobago one of the most culturally and spiritually diverse countries in the Caribbean. Among all these traditions, Limbo is probably the most famous to emerge from this country, although its real origin is far from what most people imagine. This dance, now associated with a bar that is lowered while everyone tries to pass underneath it without touching it, appears at almost any party in the world: weddings, birthdays, or school celebrations. But few know that Limbo was born in Trinidad, and that its origin was not festive but deeply spiritual. This popular movement is directly linked to the funeral rituals of African communities, where it symbolized the difficult passage of the soul to the afterlife. In those traditions, death was not a silent end. but a moment charged with spiritual meaning. The body left this world, but the soul had to overcome obstacles, dark forces, and invisible barriers to achieve freedom. Limbo represented exactly that: the descent, the narrowing of the path, the difficulty of the journey to the other side. Each time the bar was lowered, it was a reminder that the soul had to go through increasingly difficult trials to be freed. In Trinidad, when someone died, the women of the village gathered around the body and, almost as a sacred act, placed a horizontal bar made of branches, canes, or sticks decorated with red cloth. That bar represented the final frontier, the line between the world of the living and the world of the dead. Passing underneath, leaning the body backward, was not a game. It was a symbolic gesture to help the spirit of the deceased cross the barrier and move toward peace. The women repeated the movement over and over, accompanied by African songs and slow drums, marking an almost hypnotic rhythm. In some rituals, according to oral tradition, the bar was lowered progressively, reminding us that the last stages of the spiritual journey were the narrowest and most difficult. A surprising curiosity is that in certain African villages where the enslaved people who arrived in Trinidad came from, there was a belief that the spiritual world had low doors, and that only those who were humble and flexible could pass through. That symbolism was preserved in the Caribbean. Bending down, bowing, descending was an act of humility before the mystery of death. Over the years, well into the colonial period, many of these rituals were banned as pagan. But the African communities of Trinidad found ways to keep them alive, disguising them as dance, incorporating them into nighttime celebrations, or simply passing them on in secret from generation to generation. This is how the funeral dance began to be seen in broader contexts, until finally, in the 20th century, it became a festive cultural expression. The pole began to be used at parties, family celebrations, and community events, and the movement, once sad and spiritual, became more joyful, competitive, and sensual. The curious thing is that, even as it became a spectacle, Limbo never completely lost its African essence. The lowering bar still represents a test. The body leaning backward continues to symbolize the challenge, the passage through a narrow space, the journey to a place that few can reach. And although today it has become a fun game for children and adults, its roots are deeply buried in the mourning, resistance, and ancestral memory of those who brought it to these islands. But Trinidad not only saw the birth of Limbo, it also gave life to one of the most unique musical instruments on the planet. In the middle of the 20th century, in the streets of the humblest and most rhythm-filled neighborhoods, something emerged that would forever transform Caribbean music and eventually conquer international stages: the steel pan, the only acoustic instrument created in modern times. The steel pan is made from hammered and hand-tuned oil drums. This metal drum produces a vibrant, joyful, and deep sound. Its development is largely due to one key figure, Ellie Minette, known as the mother of the steel pan, the woman who transformed simple industrial drums into instruments capable of playing everything from the most energetic Caribbean rhythms to classical music pieces. Among these rhythms, soca stands out, a genre also born in Trinidad and Tobago that mixes the power of African percussion with calypso melodies and elements of Indian music. It is a vibrant, festive, and very sensual style, created to make the body move without thinking. Today, Trinidad and Tobago boasts an honor that few countries have, being one of the few places in the world where an entire musical genre was born. But Trinidad and Tobago is not just Trinidad, so now we will move on to Tobago, the small and peaceful island where nature dominates every corner. Here you will find the Main Ridge Forest Reserve, a forest that has been protected since 1776, making it the oldest forest reserve in the Western Hemisphere. The most curious thing about this place is that it was not protected by politicians, but by two sugar planters who, in the middle of the 18th century, defended the idea of protecting the rain. They believed that caring for the forest would guarantee the fertility of the land and prevent droughts. And incredibly, they were right. Their decision saved thousands of hectares, and today Main Ridge is a paradise full of colorful birds, mist-covered trails, and species that are almost impossible to see elsewhere on the planet. But if there is one thing that makes Trinidad and Tobago completely different from the rest of the Caribbean, it is its extraordinary biodiversity, disproportionate for such a small country. Here, nature seems to exaggerate in size, colors, and shapes, as if it wanted to demonstrate how powerful it can be in such a small space. These islands are home to some of the most impressive creatures on the American continent, such as the leatherback turtle, the largest reptile in the world, which can weigh over 900 kilograms and lay its eggs on beaches such as Grande Riviere. Seeing these giants emerge from the ocean and slowly crawl across the sand is like witnessing a prehistoric scene in real time. Large fruit bats also live here, known as flying foxes, whose wingspan can surprise anyone who observes them at sunset. Their silhouettes, outlined against the orange sky, look like creatures straight out of a mythological tale or a vampire movie. Trinidad and Tobago is also home to one of the most fascinating snakes on the planet, the rainbow boa. Its skin reflects flashes of bright colors when the light hits it, creating an iridescent effect so hypnotic that many visitors believe they are seeing a painted animal. This natural glow is so striking that some call it the most beautiful snake in the Caribbean. But among all the country's animal wonders, one stands out that seems to come from a parallel universe: the scarlet ibis, the national bird. Its intense red plumage, fire red, blood red, impossible red, is so vibrant that it is visible from hundreds of meters away. When they fly in groups at sunset, they form a crimson cloud that moves as if it were a single creature, a natural spectacle that many consider one of the most beautiful in the world. The combination of ancient forests, lively beaches, humid mountains, and nutrient-rich swamps means that Trinidad and Tobago has more species per square kilometer than vastly larger countries. A reminder that sometimes nature does not need large spaces to display its full force. It just needs the right place. Thinking about colors, unique animals, and controversial realities, we now come to one of the central moments of this documentary. The topic that many are waiting for. The phenomenon for which Trinidad and Tobago is known throughout the world. That of hosting, for many, the most sensual carnival on the planet. At the Trinidad and Tobago Carnival, thousands of women in tiny costumes, painted bodies, explosive movements to the rhythm of soca, streets full of color, energy, dancing, freedom. For many travelers, this festival is the paradise of freedom, and a unique experience where the body speaks louder than words. But before we dive into the extreme sensuality, let's talk about its history, its origins, and its secrets. Because Trinidad has a carnival that is unique in the world. The history of the Trinidad and Tobago Carnival is as deep and sensual as its music. It was not born as a tourist festival, much less as a commercial spectacle. It arose from the cultural clash between enslaved Africans, European colonizers, and Asian immigrants who arrived centuries later. Each group contributed its own dances, rhythms, rituals, and ways of moving. Over time, everything mixed together as if the country were a huge pot where history boils non-stop. Unlike the carnival in Brazil, colorful, gigantic, and world-famous, the Trinidadian carnival has a different essence. It is more intimate, freer, more provocative, and more visceral. While massive choreography predominates in Rio, in Port of Spain, individual sensuality reigns supreme. The movement of hips, body language, physical contact, and the energy that permeates every street. In Trinidad, carnival is not danced, it is felt, and each body tells a story. Women wear tiny costumes adorned with feathers, sequins, crystals, and bright colors. Men wear light pants, masks, or body paint. But the most hypnotic thing is not the costumes, it is the movement. The typical carnival dance is called whining, a dance where the hips move in long, smooth, deep circles, as if the pelvis were following a rhythm born in the wildest part of the earth. This movement is learned from a very young age. Girls and boys grow up watching their mothers, aunts, and older sisters dance with surprising naturalness. Many tourists are shocked to see that this movement, far from being vulgar, is a cultural expression, a body language with African and Caribbean roots. In fact, whining has a special meaning. It is a way to release energy, celebrate life, call for good luck, and of course, attract attention. Women who master this dance do so with a precision that seems choreographed, but in reality it is pure improvisation, a reality in which the body speaks before the mouth, as the locals say. Meanwhile, the music that accompanies this spectacle is known as soca, a genre also born in Trinidad. The mix of metal drums, African rhythms, Hindu energy, and Caribbean sound creates a frenetic atmosphere where each beat of the percussion makes thousands of bodies move as if they shared the same heart. The carnival reaches its peak in Jouvert, a celebration that begins at dawn. People, usually scantily clad, cover themselves in paint, mud, molasses, or oil, creating a wild, ancestral, and deeply symbolic atmosphere. Here it doesn't matter who you are. Everyone is equal, covered in mud, moving to the rhythm of the music, without judgment, without rules. And speaking of mud, we come to the most curious and sensual ritual of this carnival, the jab jab, a traditional character covered in dark oil or black molasses. The jab jab represent freedom, rebellion, the breaking of chains, uncensored sensuality. They approach the audience, dance provocatively, and create an atmosphere of ritualized eroticism that many tourists describe as the most erotic night they have ever experienced. All of this together, the whining, the soca, the jab jab, the tiny costumes, the mud, the metallic music of the steel pan, makes the Trinidad and Tobago Carnival one of the most sensual spectacles on the planet. Many people believe that the most sensual carnival in the world is in Brazil, but those who have experienced both tend to agree on something surprising. The Brazilian carnival is gigantic, impressive, and musical, but Trinidad's is more intimate, more spontaneous, and much more sensual. While Brazil has samba schools, colossal floats, and thousands of synchronized dancers, Trinidad has something different. Personal movements, closeness, absolute freedom, a tribal energy that turns every street into a wild dance floor. Here, the sensuality is not in the spectacle, it's in the atmosphere. But sensuality in Trinidad is not limited to carnival. In some rural communities and on nearby islands, women perform a ritual known as moonbathing. On full moon nights, they stand half-naked on secluded beaches, rivers, or waterfalls, letting the silvery light illuminate their skin. They say this ritual balances sexual and emotional energy, cleanses the spirit, and strengthens femininity. It is a silent, mystical, and deeply beautiful act. Far from being morbid, it is an intimate and spiritual moment that shows the African and Amerindian influence in the country's current life. Along with this ritual, there is an ancient belief in hot gurmas, women who, according to African folklore, possess a special heat capable of strengthening or weakening a man during intimate acts. Many fishermen believed that sleeping with one of them before a long trip could drain their strength. As you can see in this country, sensuality is linked to spirituality. For them, it is not just a body moving, it is energy, tradition, and mystery. At this point, after seeing so much sensuality, intense traditions, and unique rituals, we would like to ask, do you think you would be able to move your hips as stylishly as the locals? Would you like to participate? Or would you be one of those who give up after 10 minutes? It will be great and very fun to read your comments. So if you've made it this far, don't hesitate to pause the video and leave us your comment. And of course, leave your like, because your help is the best way to support Uncensored World in continuing to work to bring you content as interesting as this. As you can see, with us you travel the world like nowhere else. Thank you. But Trinidad and Tobago is not just sensuality, music, and nature. Beneath its beauty lie stories that many prefer not to tell. Death rituals, nocturnal creatures, vengeful spirits, and legends that still cause fear in rural areas today. Because here, death is not the end. It is a transition. And it all starts with a surprising ritual. As you now know, in this country, when someone died, the family would gather neighbors and friends, and the women would place a wooden bar or branches, sometimes decorated with fire or red cloth, symbolizing the border between the world of the living and the spiritual world. This gesture represented the soul's journey to the afterlife, a difficult and painful but inevitable transition until, over time, Limbo was transformed into a festive dance. Its essence still retains the oldest idea: life will always have to cross a barrier before disappearing. That is why the inhabitants of this country fear spirits known as duppies, spirits of deceased people who return to this world to punish, watch over, or protect. For them, duppies are not just any ghosts. They are believed to be able to push doors, move objects, cause nightmares, or silently accompany those who hurt them in life. Therefore, to prevent a duppy from entering their homes, locals resort to ancient traditions such as leaving a mound of salt by the door, hiding the broom so that the spirit cannot find it, or sleeping backwards in bed to confuse it. Many fishermen still follow these rules before going out to sea, just in case, as no one wants a duppy following them on a long journey, especially out at sea. But if there is one terrifying creature on these islands, it is the sukuyon, a figure that appears in many Caribbean nighttime stories. They say she is a lonely old woman who hides a dark secret. At night, she carefully removes her skin, stores it in a mortar or cauldron, and flies away transformed into a ball of fire that crosses the villages, seeking blood or energy, or the vitality of some unsuspecting person sleeping with the window open. To protect themselves, locals recommend throwing rice or salt around the house because the sukuyon, caught up in the compulsion to count every grain, wastes time and cannot attack. A perfect blend of African magic, collective fear, and oral tradition. A creature that, although many say is just a legend, no one wants to check if it's real. In this country, people believe so strongly in the afterlife and the power of spirits that many claim that ancient souls, trapped since time immemorial, rest in that lake of asphalt called Pitch Lake. And when the lake moves, when it bubbles, when the ground vibrates, they say it is those souls trying to rise to the surface. That's why some believe that if you fall into one of its crevices, it's not just the tar that swallows you. But Pitch Lake isn't the only phenomenon that fuels the legends of Trinidad and Tobago. Its very nature seems to have a life of its own. For example, in some regions of the country there are mud volcanoes, huge gray craters that relentlessly spew giant bubbles and masses of hot mud. Locals say that these volcanoes breathe, and that when they bubble more strongly than usual, it is because something in the depths is restless. As evening falls, the landscape becomes even more surreal. The mud vibrates with small tremors, and the sound it produces is reminiscent of a heart beating underground. And if that weren't enough, something so strange happens on certain coasts of Trinidad and Tobago that few tourists believe it is real until they see it with their own eyes. At night, the sea lights up. The waves break in electric blue tones, leaving phosphorescent traces on the sand. It's not magic, but bioluminescence caused by tiny marine organisms. But the sensation is so supernatural that many say it's like walking on an upside-down sky with the stars under your feet. As you can see, this country is a perfect puzzle, a place where each piece fits together to create a strong, unique, and surprising identity. Here, African mixes with Indian, European with Caribbean, sensual with spiritual, the living with the dead. It is a country where a dance can come from a funeral, where a metal drum can be born from oil barrels, where women bathe under the moon to balance their energy, where giant turtles come to lay their eggs every year, and where the carnival can be so sensual that those who experience it never forget it. For all these reasons, Trinidad and Tobago is undoubtedly one of the most extraordinary countries on the planet, a place where nature surprises, culture vibrates, myths breathe, and mystery never rests. If you've made it this far, you're probably wondering how to plan a visit to this fascinating country. Trinidad and Tobago, despite not being as touristy as other Caribbean islands, is an incredibly complete, diverse, and surprising destination, and much more accessible than many imagine. At Uncensored World, we have compiled all the key information so that you can make the most of your adventure in this unique corner of the Caribbean. Getting to Trinidad and Tobago from Europe is relatively easy. Although there are not always direct flights from all countries, it is most common to travel via cities such as London, Amsterdam, or Lisbon, and then fly to Piarco International Airport on the island of Trinidad. From America, it is even easier. From the United States, there are frequent connections via Miami, New York, or Houston, and from Panama or various Caribbean capitals, regular flights are also available. For those traveling from South America, the most common routes are via Panama or Brazil. In practice, the country is much better connected than it might seem. As for entry into the country, citizens of the European Union, much of Latin America, and the United States do not require a visa for short tourist stays, generally up to 90 days. All that is required is a valid passport, and in certain cases a ticket proving departure from the country. This makes Trinidad and Tobago one of the most convenient destinations in the Caribbean for planning a quick trip. In terms of prices, Trinidad and Tobago is not the cheapest country in the Caribbean, but it is not expensive either. The economy, supported in part by the oil and gas industry, keeps costs relatively moderate for Western visitors. A meal at a local restaurant typically costs between approximately $7 and $15, while street food, such as the famous doubles, can cost as little as a couple of dollars. Mid-range hotels can range from $30 to $60 per night, although prices in Tobago may be slightly higher due to its greater tourist influx. Transportation is affordable, and taxis or official apps are the most recommended way to get around within cities. In terms of safety, the country is generally safe for tourists, although, as in much of Latin America, it is advisable to take some basic precautions. It is advisable to avoid certain marginal areas of Port of Spain at night, not to display valuable items unnecessarily, to use official taxis or safe transportation, and to always ask locals for advice if you want to explore remote areas. Tobago, on the other hand, is considerably quieter and has a more touristy and relaxed atmosphere. With common sense, you can enjoy the country without any major problems. If you're interested in experiencing the most sensual carnival on the planet, it's important to know when it takes place. The Trinidad and Tobago Carnival is held every year just before the start of Lent, usually in February or early March. The party lasts for several days, and the streets are filled with soca music, parades, skimpy costumes, provocative dancing, and an energy that only those who experience it in person can understand. To enjoy it to the fullest, it is advisable to arrive a few days early and participate in the pre-celebrations. Attend the famous Jouvert, the early morning party where people cover themselves in mud, oil, or paint. Join a band to get your own costume. And of course, try your hand at whining, that hip movement so characteristic of the country. The nature of Trinidad and Tobago also deserves a special mention. To see giant turtles nesting at night, nothing beats the beaches of Grande Riviere. To discover a reef of impossible colors, Buku Reef in Tobago is a true paradise. If you are looking for impressive wildlife, Main Ridge Forest Reserve is one of the best places in the Caribbean to see unique birds, wet landscapes, and misty walks. And for those who want to experience extraordinary natural phenomena, Trinidad's mud volcanoes and bioluminescent nights in certain bays are true natural wonders that are hard to forget. At Uncensored World, we hope that this tour of the wonders and curiosities of Trinidad and Tobago has been as exciting for you as it has been for us. With that in mind, and considering the effort that goes into making these videos, we would love for you to give us a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and leave us a nice comment. It's the best way you can help us continue to bring you the best content every week. If you enjoyed this video and you're not already subscribed, don't wait any longer and do it now by activating the bell so you don't miss the fascinating videos we make every week. Videos like this one that you can enjoy now to discover one of the most enigmatic corners of the planet. Don't miss out and continue discovering the world with us. You're going to enjoy it.